Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is episode 152. You are listening to Let's Be Well Together podcast. I'm John Webster and I'm talking to Noura Saad. Hi, Noura.
Hi, John.
Okay, well, last time we chatted, it was on mental health first aid training. And you were giving some takeaways, just a couple that from the time before. And I know in that course, one of the things they talk about is don't assume what people need. So if somebody comes and asks you for help, don't assume what they need. Always helps to ask. And I had heard that from some of the guests I've interviewed too. In one case, Beth Beatty on bipolar disorder. And she was talking about when people need help, don't assume what they need. Say, how can I help you? Like, what is it that I can do for you? And so this is kind of this background context theme. And to me, that means sometimes people are going to ask you for things or appreciate things that you might not expect. So of course, in your job, you're helping people in domestic abuse situations, helping them navigate the court process, whether criminal or civil. And you must be dealing with a lot of people and people who need help. And I'm wondering if in your experience, have you heard people say, thanks for X or thanks for Y, and that maybe wasn't something you were expecting, or alternatively, are you hearing the same message from many people saying, I like this, that's a common theme?
I think the main one, John, is that they get to come to the office and just have someone to listen to them. When you're going through all this court proceedings, it's hard to navigate, and just having a space to just unpack it all and let someone else kind of carry it with you. I think that in its own is one, it's a big part of the role I do, but it's something that a lot of clients have expressed they appreciate, just someone to listen.
Okay, and do they tell you, like, as the thing progresses, that made a difference in their lives?
As they're leaving, I've had some clients who get quite emotional or go, I'm a hugger, so they'll lean in enough for a hug and just say, Noura, thanks for just giving me this time and this space. And I'm like, oh my gosh, absolutely, come by anytime. And so, yeah, that's one part of my role I'm very grateful to provide to my clients.
In those situations, you think, there's all this practical stuff you're doing for them. You're showing them how to fill out these forms. You're helping them understand how the court process works and where to go and what it might be like to be a witness and all these things. And yet what they thank you for is just the everyday thanks for listening, not tied to any specific task that you did.
And sometimes, John, that's all somebody just needs. I think us as helpers, whether you as a lawyer or myself as a court support worker, we think this person needs this and that, and we want to overextend ourselves. Sometimes it's just listening,
right?
Just having a cup of tea and just a space for them and just being a listener.
We've heard that in so many contexts, like so many times where it's hard to be an active listener and actually watch the person, be with the person, unfold your arms so you're open and do all those kind of things. And yet we hear time and again in so many contexts that people really appreciate someone to talk to listen to, and in a perfect world, have a conversation with. So it's going both ways.
Yeah, I've had moments where I've had clients, share with me that they were, say, craving a dessert or something that they were going to go buy, and then when they come to the office next time, I have it there for them. I'm like, oh, I remembered you mentioned this. And John, just the look on their face, it just speaks volumes of somebody heard me, somebody cared for me and took the time to do this. Or having, a client share that they're struggling in a way. And then I make a gentle referral to a resource in the community they may have not known about, right? And again, it gives them this hope and just this feeling of community to know that, one, the resource is out there and that, there's care and that they don't have to walk this journey alone. So listening and being an active listener goes a very long way.
Yeah, because it sounds like it's not just listening, and you must really feel heard if one day you're saying, oh, I have a craving for this dessert, and then next week you show up and there's that dessert. Like, talk about a personalized experience where you feel like you're heard.
I should bring a genie bottle in my office. Maybe, yeah.
And so many of these things are common sense too. Like, I remember reading not too long ago the book How to Influence Friends and Make Friends and Influence People by, I think, Dale Carnegie. It's an older book and there's a lot of stuff I don't love in it, but still, there's so many common sense things that work then that work now. And by a really weird coincidence, recently I listened to a couple of very old texts. One is called the Tao Te Ching, which is a book of Taoism, and the other is Art of War, and which is actually not really about war. But anyway, both of these are thousands of years old, and there's stuff in there that's such basic common sense that you'll find again, including in Carnegie's book and in Common Sense Worlds. And we forget some of these common lessons.
I think sometimes when we're so on the go and so embedded in our own everyday lives, and sometimes even the trauma, we forget just the basic communication, and connection and community. It's just a nice way to regroup. And sometimes we even find that it feeds us as much as it feeds the person we're sitting across. So active listening goes a long way.
And are there any things that you can kind of think of where you were listening to someone and they asked for something you weren't expecting in that context?
Well, I remember this one time we had a client come and visit the office after being at court all day and filing her paperwork. So it was quite a heavy day for her. She came in, I was there, and she just asked for a quiet space. So thankfully at our office, we have a meditation room, and she ended up going in and taking a little nap. And she came out, and when you take a nice nap, John, you wake up and you're all like fluffed up. So I was really happy we could provide her just some space for herself. So
I can imagine that scenario a lot too. Somebody coming to talk, and she's at work and saying, I've had a real struggle the last few days. I'm under a lot of stress. And if you said to them, well, how can I help? And I can imagine people saying, I just need to find a way to have a full night's sleep. Like I just need 9 or 10 hours of sleep, which is, you might be thinking, oh, who do I put them in touch with? And, what resources? But if you ask them, all they really want is a good night's sleep. And so can you help find a way to make that happen? Maybe you can say, hey, don't come in tomorrow morning or something to that effect.
And again, I think even active listening, really just when we ask the question of how can I help you, these conversations start coming up and we realize more. We don't assume, we realize more of what they need and how we can support them.
And I can imagine too, there might be times where somebody asks for something and that doesn't feel right or sound right. So it doesn't mean you have to do everything that they say, but at least asking, you might get a better sense of where they're coming from and whether they are looking for something different than what you assume.
Absolutely.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds.
Today's interview is in the category of spiritual wellness. It's our second chat with David Hulse, who bridges traditional religious doctrines with contemporary spiritual insights. He's the founder and spiritual guide at the Academy for Spiritual Awakening. Welcome back, David.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
David Hulse is a vibrant spiritual guide with decades of experience as a minister, teacher, author, and healer. He's journeyed from a fundamentalist Christian upbringing to an inclusive spiritual vista that champions love over fear. David is the founder and spiritual guide at the Academy for Spiritual Awakening, where his teachings weave together diverse spiritual traditions with modern scientific insights, inspiring individuals to move beyond mere belief in God towards experiencing the divine within themselves. He's dedicated to challenging conventional religious dogmas. He offers a message of unconditional love, inclusivity, the power of gnosis, direct knowledge from the source. And David empowers people to embody their true spiritual potential, fostering a global spiritual evolution. So David, during our last chat, you spoke about moving to a love-based spirituality. You talked about moving past childhood religious root assumptions and how spirituality fosters resilience. And today I want to ask you about some connections between science and spirituality. I'm a big fan of science. So for example, in your resource material, you mentioned an intersection between quantum physics and spirituality. I like watching shows about the universe, principles of physics, that kind of thing. So you've piqued my interest. So what are some of the intersections you see?
Well, I do think it's interesting that we're seeing what we might call a marriage of spirituality and science, whereas it's been very polarized.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Either you were a creationist or you were an evolutionist, but I see creation and evolution have met in a state of consciousness. And that's exciting because it took a long time for evolution to bring consciousness to the forefront. And now consciousness is driving evolution. So by raising our consciousness, we are moving our ability to evolve ourselves to the next level of what it means to be human. So I'm excited about this teaching. Quantum physics, when I experienced coming out of my old religious dogma, there was a vacancy. I needed something. And I was listening to an old tape years ago from a guy that had a heavy accent, kind of boring. I wasn't getting a thing that he was saying. I was stuck in a hotel room in Memphis, Tennessee. I was speaking, and I was kind of at the end of my belief system. Didn't know what I believed anymore. It was really a rough time. And I listened to this cassette tape out of total boredom, and I was about to nod off asleep. And the guy said, new physics has found out what we thought was empty space in the human cell is a teeming electromagnetic field of possibility. And John, I shot up out of that chair, like every cell in my body just lit up. And I knew that I had found what old science had called empty space was just a teeming field of possibility. Or we may say, I found God within. I found my own potential within myself, changed everything for me. So quantum physics at that point began to fill in a lot of the spaces that religion had left with me. It answered questions that I could not find answers for in religion. I was finding them in quantum physics. One of the great things that quantum physics gave to me was a shift from a religious, spiritual point of view to a scientific, energetic point of view. That everything is energy, everything is vibration, everything is frequency. And it just changed everything in me. And everything I looked at, I found that. And being versed in Bible stuff, the Bible starts out, and God moved across the face of the deep. And I thought, what does that mean, God moved? Can God move?
Right.
And so I started studying that word moved, and I found an old translation that said God fluttered. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Then I found even a deeper one and said God vibrated across the face of the deep. Now imagine divine mind vibrating in the absence of our mind from our spirituality. And that's what's happening all over the world, John, with individual people, is there's an inner awakening that is happening that is going to change everything for us about the way we think about ourselves, each other, the world. And it's just an amazing time that the universe is just showing up at the right time, at the right intersection to help us to this next level.
Now, this is kind of coming out of left field a bit. I hadn't thought about this before, but one of the things that I connect to spirituality is a connectedness. So connectedness from me to the ground, to the heavens, to the universe, but also to other people. And when you're thinking about this kind of vibration, this energy, do you see a connectedness between people?
I do. And when you go into higher frequencies and vibrations, that's what we mean when we say heaven or heavens. The word heaven comes from a word that means elevated. It doesn't mean a place somewhere in the sky or people going to die and go to heaven. It means that heaven is a higher part of self. It is a higher part of ourself. And when we're in that, we're in this natural state of ourself. So it's not having peace, it's being peace. It's not having love, it's being love. And this is where you find your authentic identity in that area. Now, as the frequencies come down, we come into manifestation levels that we call earth. So heaven and earth is in ourselves. It's not a place we go to out there. It's a place that we discover kind of within ourselves. Now, if you think about spokes are the different levels of thinking and consciousness. But the spokes, and we used to have these on wheels, I know, but if you had those kind of wheels that had spokes, if you followed all the spokes, they merged in the hub. So there's a saying in A Course in Miracles that I love that says all consciousness is a connection with all consciousness at some deep level. So as we follow consciousness in, our consciousness becomes a part of that one consciousness that we call God, life, spirit, whatever it is, unity, or whatever. And I think that's what we need to do, is we need to find and remember that connection that we have, but we have forgotten it because we become so materialistic and we think we're bodies, and we become race conscious and isms and gender consciousness, and I'm this and I'm that and you're not. And all of that's built all these systems of 3D that I think are being broken down right now. And we're going to establish new ways of thinking that I think is going to bring us together and not divide us. You know, the thing that has happened in the old school is they have learned very well how to divide us and conquer. Well, I think that's getting ready to reverse, no matter how it looks today in the world. And I know it doesn't look good, but it's really setting us up to begin to move toward healing and uniting. That is what being spiritual is to me.
I just finished reading the book, The Three Musketeers, a really old book, and there was somebody in it who was talking about being a king, and they said, to rule, you must divide. So,
exactly.
But if I take your spoke analogy, I kind of can imagine that in different ways, and I know it's an analogy, but I can imagine there being a hub in myself and these different spokes reaching out. But I think you may be also saying that there's a hub in, say, the universe, and kind of we're the spokes, and we connect at the hub, or our consciousnesses do that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I totally agree with that. Exactly what I'm saying, yes.
There's another concept I don't quite get, just because I haven't looked into it enough, but what do you mean by gnosis? Gnosis.
Okay, gnosis. Gnosis is a Greek word for knowledge. And actually, before Christianity organized itself, there was those who studied knowledge. And this knowledge of gnosis is not knowledge you learn from outside yourself, but is direct knowledge from your higher spiritual self into the mind. You might call that today an epiphany. When you have an epiphany or an aha moment and you get that thought you would have never thought, that's gnosis, a moment of gnosis. For the first 300 years before they organized it, there was those who taught that our hope was in teaching and knowledge. This is why it concerns me that so much of the teachings of some of the great avatars have been edited out, such as Yeshua or Jesus. They took out 18 years of his life in the New Testament when he was off learning. He was learning in India. He was learning all these things. They don't want us to know what he was learning, because he was teaching us how to empower ourselves, not to worship him, but how to empower himself. So these people who were studying that, gnosis, became known as Gnostics. So there is such a thing as a Gnostic gospel that has a whole different idea of what Christianity was before Christianity. And I connected with that a lot.
It's just the coincidences are just so funny because, again, like I've gone back to an ancient Greek philosophy approach to ethics, which took place before they started doing the judgmental side of ethics. And back then, that's where I come up with the concept of trying to become the most excellent person you can be. And yes, a lot of that gets driven from your inner knowledge. Like you know what you admire in yourself. You know, like, for example, I like to be a well-rounded person. I want to develop skills in all many areas. And that's coming from myself, not from other people. And it's interesting that you're talking about an ancient Greek approach. And, you know, by coincidence, I've been gravitating towards that as well.
I find these synchronicities so much anymore with people. I mean, something's going on that's connecting us in spite of ourselves.
Yeah, and it's always great when you have your epiphany and you find out someone else had that epiphany. It means so much more. And you've talked a couple of times about 3D, and I know you talk about 5D. I'm quite curious about that. Can you help me understand what you mean by 3D versus 5D?
Well, from physics, we know we live in a three-dimensional world. Everything that you see through your five senses has a height, width, and a breadth to it. That's just the world that we live in is 3D. Now, Einstein came along and said, okay, we've got space, but how do we move through space is time, 4D. So you have 3D, 4D continuum of what we mostly experience here in this world. But I believe that there's a new dimension that is breaking through to 3D. So for communication, I'm just going to call it 5D. And that is a place in which we're better people, we're better selves. In 3D, we leave some of the lower aspects of ourselves and we become more pure, more light than we are just human. I tell you, the best example I can give is the oldest one, and that's that little caterpillar. who's just going along on that leaf, nibbling, thinking this is its destiny. And all of a sudden, something inside changes and it stops and said, oh my God, what's going on? Something big is getting ready to happen. And that new set of DNA is in there. And I always tell people that old caterpillar doesn't go through that to become an enlightened caterpillar. It is coming to become the next stage of its evolution. And I think we're in that place of transformation that is very similar to that as we move to become a 5D human being. Now, people who's interested in that can Google. There's a lot of 5D teaching out there. Most of it is good, but you have to discern. Of course, everything is on the internet. But there's a lot of us that are teaching about how to move into 5D. One of the things that's showing up that is a phenomenon around the world, especially coming out of Australia, New Zealand, whatever, is called light language. Light language. People who are beginning to speak out of parts of their mind that is not learned language. It just sounds like a bunch of gibberish, but that gibberish is that 97% of our genetic material we've never used called junk DNA. Wow, now this gets heavy stuff, but this is what's happening in people that they don't understand. What's happening to me? We're like that caterpillar. What's going on with me? Everything, all my old patterns that I'm familiar with is changing. And we're being challenged to grow and to move forward.
It's going to be interesting to see how this develops. And it's not the same point, but I did read an article recently, and I wish I read it more carefully because I could give you more information. But there were some scientists who are positing that our consciousness, like it's not just a matter of pure physical evolution, but that our consciousness of humans came from a different dimension. Wouldn't that be interesting? Maybe we're going to get closer to that. That interests me
a lot. I delve into that too, that I do believe in intergalactic consciousness. I do believe the universe is a consciousness. I think that universe became galactic. I think it became solar, and I think it became planetary. So all of this is a step down of frequencies of consciousness that's available to us. So it's kind of like in the Bible, Jacob's ladder. There's a ladder that went, up to heaven.
Yep.
And those ladders, those rungs are those levels of consciousness that are becoming available to us.
Well, it sounds like I'm going to have to come back and talk to you again, maybe in half a year or something, and regroup, because this is just so much fun and so interesting. And just before we turn to the question we ask every guest, I know you told us last time how people could get in touch with you, but I just want to make sure that information's out there in case someone's listening to tonight and didn't listen last time. So could you please let people know how they could get a hold of you or find your resources?
Sure, and thank you for that. Your listeners can find more at davidhulse.com. And Hulse is like your pulse with an H. davidhulse.com. There they will find the Academy for Spiritual Awakening, which is created to be a sanctuary for seeking higher consciousness and spiritual enlightenment. Also, it has been created as a space of non-judgment and resources for people to find answers to their spiritual questions through diverse courses, becoming a supportive community, and thought-provoking teaching. Your listeners can sign up for a free awakening sampler that offers them a preview of the spiritual courses, audiobooks, meditations, and community found in the Academy. So I invite anyone out there who's interested, who's feeling any resonance at all to the word, and you may not understand all the words you're hearing, but you might feel a resonance with it. If you do, then I hope that you will check us out by visiting www.davidhulse.com. And John, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity.
Well, and thank you. I've learned a lot, and I've really enjoyed the chat. And as you know, we asked the same question. You got it last time, so I'm going to ask you again how you're doing now. It's in a context where we all have areas of wellness that are important to us, but not enough time to focus on all of them at any given time. So we do a mini wellness check-in. So David, today, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing you could do to foster wellness in that area?
More movement, not just exercise, but movement. We've got to find movement. I've just recently started Qigong, which is a kind of just a movement of exercises of energy, and it is just amazing what it has done for me. So that's my entrance into more movement in my life. So that is something I'm really working on, because we sit so much nowadays. We're at our desk all the time. We really need to keep moving.
Well, I'll tell you a little story. Everyone who listens has heard this a few times, but I fell in love with distance running. Don't know why, because I hated it most of my life, but late in life I found love with distance running. And I'm convinced that when I'm out on a nice long run and I'm in a groove and things are working out well, especially if the environment is nice, I feel like different doors in my mind open up that don't otherwise open up. And I think it's because of movement, and it's because I'm doing what humans do, which is to move. So I wish you luck in that. And I hope that when you are moving, you have some more epiphanies, because you've had some great ones so far.
Thank you. I hope so too.
We hope you're enjoying the show, and we hope you're finding ways to foster wellness in the categories that are important to you. If you like what you're hearing, head to our website, letsbewelltogether.com, and then to the archives page. It includes a quick summary of the different segments of all of our shows back to the start. Have a look and see if there's something interesting you want to listen to, and listen to one of our past episodes.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
We have an episode dropping the day before Christmas Eve. And whatever your spirituality is, I'm guessing that at this time of year, there's holidays.
Yes.
And we won't get too much into this, but for a lot of people, that means big family get-togethers, lots of big meals, lots of eating and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of people, it's a very lonely time of year.
Mm-hmm, that's true.
They're by themselves. They may be not mobile for their own reasons because, there's nobody to be with, and they're just kind of hunkering down and not really feeling energetic. Mm-hmm. I thought it'd be a good time to remind people that during these holidays, especially if you are eating a lot and you are doing lots of family stuff, move that body. Mm-hmm. Just think about little things. You don't have to go crazy. You don't have to do like a 20-kilometer run, but going for walks and that kind of thing. What are you thinking, Sheila?
I agree with you. I think it's really great to get out there and go for a walk. It doesn't matter how cold it is. Just bundle up and walk around the block.
It feels great.
Just get some fresh air, get your body moving, get some quiet time. I think you can do it if you can get the time to do that. That would probably be very beneficial.
It's so easy. You're grabbing snacks and you got cookies going, you got desserts going. And I don't know why. I can just talk from my own experience, but it's easy to kind of say, I'm just going to put this off for a few days. Mm-hmm. A few days of downtime. Mm-hmm. But I don't feel so good when I take that downtime. I feel a lot better when, especially a lot of times you or I, it's kind of our go-to, hey, I'm feeling full. Let's go for a walk.
Yeah. But the other thing is if you're finding that you don't have time, because that is another problem, right? If you're the one that's doing all the cooking and all the wrapping and, hosting and everything, make time during your cooking. For example, every time you're...
Remind us of some of your crazy ideas about how you move that body in the kitchen when you're cooking.
So when you're stirring the pot, stir your hips at the same time.
Okay.
If you're stirring the pot to the right, stir your hips to the right. And then do it to the left, stir your hips to the left. Grabbing pots, you can, if you're grabbing your pots, do 5 squats every time you grab a pot or a dish. Yeah.
Okay.
So you grab, and then the thing is, it'll become habitual almost. Oh, I just grabbed a plate, 5 squats, or, 1 squat, whatever you want.
Not to mention, it's very entertaining for everybody who's watching you.
Yeah.
Because we have our kitchen's kind of open to the living room. And so if people are sitting on the couch, they'd have a great time watching you swivel your hips, do squats.
You think, but actually everyone's so busy. There's so much going on that no one really noticed. And a lot of times you're doing your prepare work. There's no one there. So doing squats, doing rises, calf rises or just up, lifting your heels up and down. You can do that every time maybe while you're doing the dishes.
Right.
So you can do your own little routine.
Yeah, just make up your own thing, but move that body in between cooking moves.
Yeah, just try and incorporate into your busy holiday.
Okay, so just a quick reminder, people. It's holiday time. You might not be moving much. Start moving much. Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way. It's sign-off time, and it's John here with Sheila tonight.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays. I'm going to actually talk about, I just finished a book, and I just want to throw out there that I've been having a lot of fun. I'm reading a lot of books, audiobooks. Mm-hmm. Still call that reading. Mm-hmm. And I do a lot of walking to work and a lot of walking so I can read lots of books. And I've had this really cool rhythm where I look for an old literature, like books people should read. And then I'll read that. And then I'll read some new stuff. Mm-hmm. And then just kind of things that catch my interest. Mm-hmm. And I just finished reading Tess of the D'Urbervilles. I have no idea what I thought it would be about. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a happy story. It kind of reminded me of a Shakespearean tragedy.
Right. In
a lot of ways. But it was really thought-provoking. And so I'm glad I read these old books. It's not like watching that movie where we're like, whoa, that was so action-packed and so full. Mm-hmm. But it just has me thinking all these different thoughts that I wouldn't normally think. Plus, I just love reading about other ages. Just kind of the routine of people's lives in different eras is really cool. And just before that, I read a book that I would call not modern, but newer, Cold Mountain. And I read another book by the same author, 13 Moons. I really enjoyed those two as well, reading about different time periods and just really interesting stuff. Cold Mountain, again, is more of a tragedy, but still, it was really, again, interesting, thought-provoking. You think a lot about the characters. So I've had a lot of fun reading books lately. And then as a quick point, we were just up at our Collingwood condo. Again, we're getting it ready for our winter tenants. Mm-hmm. But we did have time to see Elise and Stephen and Michael.
Yes.
Even though it was for a short time, it was a lot of fun. How was your week, Sheila?
Oh, my week was awesome. I had a fabulous time up at the condo. We actually went to the mountain this time, and we haven't done that.
At night.
It's not something we do because it's very touristy.
Right.
So we find it busy, but we were like, oh, let's go. And it was a Friday night. And it was actually quiet, cold, a little cold, but beautiful.
It was it's like something out of a movie.
I literally felt like I was in a Hallmark movie. It was so beautiful. So that was really nice. And then we also went for a hike on Saturday. So I'm very proud of us. Like we were out doing stuff it was -14. So cold, but we went out there and did it. Now we went for a hike to a cafe and had a little treat. True. But still, we went out there and did it. So that was a lot of fun. And not only did we get to see Elise and Stephen and Michael, but also we got to see some of Elise's friends that are in town, and they're living in Australia and in Berlin. So that was really fabulous. Haven't seen them in a long time, and it was so nice to get together. So it's kind of like the start of holidays for us.
It was. And so now we're really into it. So we hope everyone's enjoying their holidays, whatever they may be. And we hope you enjoyed the podcast and hope to see you again soon.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.